Okay, and good morning. Welcome back to the Health, Environment, and Technology Committee. The committee will now move on to Bill 2. And I apologize, everyone. My camera wasn't on. So I just want to welcome you back to the Health, Environment, and Technology Committee. The committee will now move on to Bill 21-0049, Prohibited Disposals, Fines and Reportings, the Neighbors Against Predatory Dumping Act, for the purpose of modifying the applicable environment control citation and civil citation fines for violating Title VII, Subtitle 6 of the Baltimore City Health Code, and requiring that the health commissioner submit an annual report detailing certain information regarding the city's prohibited disposal laws. For this hearing, we will start with brief remarks from the sponsor of the bill, and then we're going to hear reports from the agencies and give committee members the opportunity to ask questions. After that, we're going to move on to public testimony if there is anyone available to testify. At this time, we're going to hear from the bill sponsor, and that's going to be Councilman Z. Cohen. And Councilman Cohen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee. I want to begin by recognizing some of the newly formed coalition of council members that have been working on this issue since the start of this council. Council members Porter, Torrance, Ramos, and I have been meeting with neighborhood leaders to help come up with solutions, and appreciate the pairing up of these two hearings and the good work of the past resolution. Also want to thank all of my colleagues, as I know we each deal with this issue in our own districts. We each host and support cleanups. Illegal dumping is probably the bane of each of our existences. And today we're here to say enough is enough. Across Baltimore, there is an incredible frustration about the amount of illegal dumping we see in our communities. We hear it all the time. People are tired of our neighborhoods being treated as a dumping ground. We know that blight causes increased toxic stress and adds to trauma. It is unfair, and we need to hold perpetrators fully accountable. Listen, Baltimore is behind the curve in our citation and fee structure. In New York, they charge $4,000 for the initial fine. In New Jersey, a first offense is $2,500. In Philadelphia, first offenses range from $1,000 to $2,000. In Washington, D.C., a first offense is up to $5,000. Subsequent offenses, $10,000. In Baltimore, we are still at $500. The final point I want to make is that while this crime negatively impacts our entire city, it does not impact our communities equally. Illegal dumping happens most frequently in disinvested neighborhoods where people think they can get away with it. I don't see much dumping happening in Harbor East, but I definitely see it, Madam Chair, happening in Highlandtown and the Baltimore Highlands. As we pursue equity across our city, it's important to send the message that this predatory activity will not be tolerated. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
Thank you, Councilman Cohen. I also just want to recognize Councilman Ryan Dorsey. He is present for this bill hearing. We are now going to hear from agency representatives and committee members. Please hold your questions until we've heard from all of the agencies. We're going to start with the Department of Housing and Community Development's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Again, I am joined here today by Jason Hessler, Deputy Commissioner of Permits and Litigation. We are here to report on the Neighbors Against Predatory Dumping Act. We do not object to the passage of City Council Bill 210049 and are committed to working in partnership with sister agencies to address the sanitation challenges in Baltimore City. Code enforcement inspectors and the Special Investigations Unit work closely with DPW. Once an investigated site has been investigated, we work with DPW to have the illegally dumped debris removed. The Special Investigations Unit is a unit within DHCD's code enforcement section, and they work to criminally prosecute illegal dumpers, seize vehicles used in dumping, and issue environmental citations. I don't want to belabor too much of the work of the Special Investigations Unit that we covered in the previous hearing, but I will note that in 2020, DHCD issued 754 citations for illegal dumping. We recognize that investigation and enforcement responsibilities fall to DHCD, but those efforts are best supported by proactive cleaning, education, and a citywide communication strategy. We do not object to the passage of City Council Bill 210049, and we stand by to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Stephanie. We're going to move on to the Department of Public Works.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Sorry for the delay. Mute wasn't working. This is Marcia Collins. I'm the Chief Legislative Officer for the Department of Public Works, and we have still with us today Mr. John Chalmers, Bureau Head of Solid Waste, and Kristen Oldendorf of his staff. We did submit a written report to the committee, and while we defer to Law, Health, and Housing on the issuance of fines, and that's something that's not within our control. We again just want to emphasize that we do need to change people's behavior, and that takes time, education, and campaigns. We do need people to think differently about their waste, which was the point of our Less Waste, Better Baltimore operational plan, and which Mr. Sawtelle briefly mentioned in that approach about changing our activities with waste and how it's handled. And we just recognize that it is important to have consequences to these kinds of actions. And thank you very much.
Thank you. We're moving on to the Department of Health.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Paul Nibber, Director of Legislative Affairs for the Baltimore City Health Department. As mentioned in our report, we are favorable with amendment. As mentioned by our colleagues over at Housing, much of the enforcement around illegal dumping does occur within their department. However, what we should note is that much of the language around illegal dumping is included in the health code. So this sort of strange situation has caused some difficulty around the reporting requirement that's already included within this bill. Because it is written within the health code, any sort of revision to the health code means that the duties of reporting would end up falling on the health commissioner or our staff within the health department. Unfortunately, we're not the custodians of this information, and moreover, we don't work with enforcement as mentioned earlier. So we worked with the bill sponsor, Councilman Conway, to essentially strike this and then work with him on this reporting requirement going forward in a different manner. With that said, we do agree with the bill sponsor that illegal dumping is a health issue. It is an issue that certainly contributes to disparities within our communities. And so we are absolutely supportive of the intent of this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. To the committee members, I just want to note that the amendment that DePaul was referring to, it was included within your updated package that was emailed to you at 8:34 a.m. If you want to go ahead and just take a look, if you haven't already. We're going to move on to the Environmental Control Board's report. And Nina, did you just want to provide a status of that report? If no one's on, actually, I see Rebecca Woods. Director Woods? Okay, Nina, before we move on, did you just want to make a note of it?
Councilwoman, can you hear me now? It's Rebecca Woods.
Okay, I can hear you, Director Woods. Thank you.
Yep, sorry, I was muted. It said muted by the host. I'm sorry, I'm having connectivity issues this morning, so I do apologize for the council for not having camera. The ECB stands by its report. We don't have an objection to the increase in the fine amount. Our only concern is that we've seen much more success with targeting actual dumpers with the use of cameras and prosecution through the courts rather than environmental citations. Oftentimes, what we find in hearings and in written correspondences with respondents is that the environmental citation, while addressing trash that is located by housing and then identified through that trash, the actual dumper is not the one that's cited. So that's our only concern. But as far as the fine amount goes, we do not have any objection.
Thank you so much. We're going to move to the Law Department.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Elena DePietro, Chief Solicitor in the Baltimore City Law Department. We reviewed this bill, and it primarily is a change in the fine amounts. And the Baltimore City Charter mandates that the city can only charge up to $1,000 and/or I think less than a year in jail, incarceration as potential fines for any violation of our code. So $1,000 is within the authority of the city council to provide for a penalty, but that's at the top range of where we are allowed currently to place our fines.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
we're going to move on to the Department of Finance.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the council. Aaron Moore, Assistant Budget Director for the Department of Finance. Department of Finance does not oppose this piece of legislation. We fully support, efforts to deter illegal dumping. However, we do not anticipate that there will be any increased operating expenses or very minimal revenue increases as well. It is our understanding that these citations are not lienable and they may be abated based on ECB findings, and they particularly have a low collection rate. With that, I will defer to the other agencies and supporting the ECB's recommendation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open the floor to committee members for questions. Committee members, please signal or use the raise hand function if you have a question for one of our agencies. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Councilman Conway.
I just have a question for finance. Can you elaborate on why we don't believe this will result in any additional revenue? You spoke on a little bit, but can you just give a little more insight?
Sure, absolutely. So basically, the analysis contained in the fiscal impact section of our report shows, one, the number of citations that occurred, both 500 and 1,000. And then there's a projection of what would occur if we did all of the $500 citations historically at $1,000. Due to the lack of enforcement mechanisms and the low collection rate, we in fact anticipate that the collection rate could potentially decrease with the higher fee. And so therefore, because it's going up so high, we expect lower collections over time, potentially. And we've laid out a couple of scenarios. If the collection rate is unchanged, we only project about $100,000 in increased revenue. But if the collection rate decreases, we show that that revenue decreases in each scenario, what we would expect additionally. So generally, we expect minimal, if not any, increase in revenue from this change. Of course, we've also highlighted in our other considerations that this may also affect equity in a potentially in an adverse way, which will require further analysis.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. For the bill sponsor, did you have any questions or any additional notes that you want to make at this time, Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No additional questions except to say that do respect the Health Department's amendment. However, it is a bit of a weird situation with the Health Department having some jurisdiction, but not actually doing the work that either DPW or the Housing Department does in terms of these fines. Not for this hearing, but just something that I think our committee or your committee, a committee should look into at some point, as it is sort of a strange arrangement that we have set up.
Thank you, Councilman Cohen. Seeing that there are no additional questions, we're going to move into public testimony. And Matt, you can take over from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder to everyone who's joined by computer, if you'd like to testify, please use the raise hand function to let us know. We do not currently have anyone with their hand raised, but I'll give you a moment. Madam Chair, it looks like there's no public testimony on this bill.
Okay, thanks so much, Matt. So that's going to conclude the public testimony. Is there a motion for the Health Department's amendment?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, I thought I heard a voice. I see Councilman Torrance. Okay, so moved by Councilman Torrance. Is there a second?
Second, Conway.
Councilman Conway. Okay, Councilman Conway. And okay, so all those in favor, I'm sorry, motion made by Councilman Torrance. It was seconded by Councilman Conway. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion has passed. Is there a motion to recommend this bill favorably as amended?
So moved, Torrance.
Second, Conway.
Okay, so it was moved by Councilman Torrance, seconded by Councilman Conway. Chairman Cray, I'm a yes. Councilman Bullock.
Yes.
Councilman Conway.
Aye.
Councilman Dorsey.
Yes.
Councilwoman Porter.
Yes.
Councilman Torrance.
Aye.
Councilman Schleifer.
Yes.
Okay, the motion has passed 7-0. The committee will report the bill at the next council meeting. I want to thank everyone for joining us for both bills this morning, and this hearing is now adjourned. Have a great day.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.